Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. You are listening to episode 123. Hey, Brian, good morning.
A, B, C, as easy as 1, 2, 3.
Oh, it's a special episode. You get to hear us sing.
Exactly. Well, cool. Yes, here we are, episode 123.
Yeah, how you doing today?
There's got to be some type of numerology magic around that, right?
So I'm sure somebody will let us know.
Okay, let us know, numerologists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Episode 123. And we're excited today because the topic is one that people actually talk a lot about. The book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes. So this episode is going to kind of be a little like a book review, but not totally like a book review like we've done in the past. And the reason that we've decided to look at this book, and really what we're talking about is where do we pick up where the body keeps the score left off, especially when we talk about sensation-based motivation coaching and what we do here at the Somatic Coaching Academy. But the reason why this book really kind of rose to the surface is because when I travel and when I teach or would have people come to public classes, people would meet for the first time, the number one kind of book-related question that I get from people is always, have you read The Body Keeps the Score?
Right.
And so it's a seminal work. I mean, it's a best-selling book written in 2014 by Bessel van der Kolk. And it really was so timely when it hit.
It's been out for how long now?
Well, since 2014.
Oh, yeah. Oh, really? Is that it?
Yeah, that's right. It hasn't
it's
really
actually
been
not that long. I knew it was popular when I walked into my daughter's college bookstore, and it was in the very, very front table at the college bookstore. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this has really gained...
Yeah, it's really
tremendous mainstream popularity.
Mainstream popularity. It's been a game changer. And I think that's because, number one, it's an amazing book. I mean, it's written really well. And I think it meets the times really well.
Timeliness, right? I agree. Like there's some kind of really timely thing about it that people are craving, maybe more answers or...
Yeah, well, I think there's
something different,
an incredible blend of science in there, which I think a lot of people in the Western contemporary world really, really appreciate. And it also meets a gap of, let's just say, a healing gap for people. And also hits a time in the world where human beings are reckoning with their trauma history, right? With our cultural, ancestral, political, situational trauma in a lot of ways. And this book just met the time perfectly. And I think that's why it's had broad acceptance, mainstream acceptance. And why Bessel van der Kolk, you see him speaking, teaching
everywhere now.
A lot of places. Yeah. And to his credit, this is an amazing book. And so if you haven't read the book, let's just say, it's a great read. It's a comprehensive read. Let me put it that way. It is readable. It's pretty digestible. But there's if you're new to the science and physiology and those types of things around trauma, take your time going through it because there are some concepts in there that take a little bit of digesting to happen because it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, this is the first time they're reading anything like this.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Because it really does have mainstream appeal.
Yeah, and so the book really again looks at trauma physiology in a really important way. It looks at the science of trauma and the physiology of trauma in a really important way. Bessel van der Kolk also kind of explores like some modalities in that too, like EMDR and yoga, qigong, breath work, traumatic memory integration work, parts work, community integration kind of stuff. So he kind of looks at a lot of different modalities in the book as well, which I think is also why it's had kind of broad mainstream kind of acceptance. And really the overall theme of the book is coming at uh, trauma from a body mind lens, right? From a body centered focus
Right.
sort of thing. And that's really what he's been advocating for, is that when it comes to healing, working with trauma, it's a body experience, and top down therapy has limitations in his experience. He writes about
Right.
his professional experiences in the book as well, and looks at the research as that also. She's a really big advocate of both bottom up and top down methodologies, which we talk a lot about here in our podcast.
Yeah, so I've heard some people kind of criticize the book a little bit, like it's not as simple as the body keeps the score, but the integration of the two, the top down and the bottom up, and again to the timeliness of this book, I think we know that something's missing from the
Mhm.
constant top down approach that we hear all over the place all the time,
Yeah.
and so it does really fill this gap around the bottom up approaches.
Yeah, he really did kind of make people or bring to the forefront the reality, the physiology, the science of having your system be hijacked. Let's just put it that way, right? That when you experience, and by the way, this happens in trauma for sure, and that's Bessel van der Kolk's lens. But it also happens in all humans. Like the same process happens in all humans. It just happens to show up more definitively and kind of more explicitly in people who've experienced trauma around the idea of your amygdala, parts of your limbic system kind of hijacking your cognitive or rational brain because of a response to some type of activator or what you could call trigger or something in the environment that reactivates old patterns, sort of thing. And what he really brings to the forefront is the importance, really importance of learning how to navigate your internal sensory world, your interoceptive world, so that you don't get hijacked. Or that if you do get hijacked by your limbic system, you have a way back. You have a way back to find stability and groundedness, self advocacy, self efficiency, so that you can really respond in healthy, functional ways to things that are happening in the world.
And the body has to do those things, is
Exactly,
the thing.
exactly. Yep.
And that I mean that's the piece that's missing with these top-down approaches is that we really do need a body approach.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have kind of jotted down, because I've read the book a couple of times, more than a couple of times. I've read it a few times. And, if I had my version of it here,
All the
edition of it, it'd be all
highlights
highlighted and there's,
marked
sticky
up.
notes and all that kind of stuff on it. But I've got some kind of key takeaways from the book, kind of. Let's just go over some key takeaways and then let's talk about the segue of where sensation-based motivation coaching picks up
Right.
where the body keeps the score left off.
Yeah, because it really is an
Yep.
evolutionary process kind of thing.
Yeah, it really is.
Right.
Really
The
is.
body keeps the score kind of open to a new conversation for people
Yes. Yeah.
that can be taken even farther.
Yeah, in a really powerful conversation. So one of the key takeaways is that trauma reorganizes the nervous system towards protection. So when we experience trauma, your whole nervous system basically gets reorganized, prioritized towards self-protection. And that can show up in forms of like hyperarousal in your nervous system, which again, we've talked about a lot in the podcast, shutdown, which you've talked a lot about in the podcast, and also dissociation, which you've talked about on the podcast. So when we experience trauma, your nervous system reorganizes itself to really prioritize protecting itself to a greater degree than if you hadn't experienced some type of traumatic experience.
Mhm.
So that's one like kind of key takeaway that he really brought to the forefront. That is more common knowledge now than it used to be, but let's just kind of let's just tick these boxes so that we're all on the same page with it.
Yeah, I think it's common knowledge, but it's not common practice. People don't know how to practice
Yeah,
it so much,
exactly.
but it's more of a common knowledge kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So another key takeaway is that he actually has kind of like a whole chapter or section of a chapter on traumatic memory, which I found really
Mm.
fascinating. And so he talks about traumatic memory really coming up or coming through as sensations, images, impulses, and emotional flooding rather than coherent narratives. So a integrated memory is one that you have a linear story around. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And traumatic memory doesn't show up that way. It shows up really fragmented. But what I thought was really interesting, how he describes it as coming back as sensations, as images, as impulses, and as emotional floods. And a lot of the work we do with sensation-based motivation coaching really meets those parameters in a really, really powerful way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's another one of the key takeaways. So another one is that the central problem around trauma is it always or most often includes some type of loss of self-regulation and choice.
Right.
And so not only was, and by the way, not lack of insight. So that's the big difference, right? The problem with self-regulation and choice of that being able to self-regulate, not insight. So oftentimes when people experience trauma, they have insight around what's going on. And that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is that the body takes over
Mm-hmm.
and causes that massive sense of dysregulation. And that's why the body keeps the score, right?
Which
Because
actually influences insight.
exactly, right. So that's a critical kind of point we want to make here. People are experiencing trauma, they're not lacking insight, they're lacking or having difficulty with self-regulation
Mm-hmm.
because they've lost choice. And so their body kind of takes over for them, again, because it's trying to protect
Protect
them.
itself, yeah.
Yeah, because it goes right back to that first key takeaway.
Yeah.
So many great points in the book. I'm just kind of again just touching on these because I think they just give us a good idea about the heart of the book itself. So other another key takeaway is that many coping strategies that people do are what they really are attempts to self-regulate.
Absolutely.
So as they may seem dysfunctional on the surface, and so we're talking about coping strategies around eating,
Eating, watching TV, using your
videos,
phone.
yep, yep, or even emotional coping strategies like even anger
Uh-huh.
or shutting down or whatever it is. Like really, what those are attempts for the nervous system to regulate itself.
Yep. And there's so much self-judgment that people have
Correct. Yeah.
around what they're doing. And especially when they're trying to meet goals and they want to look like they're high performers or do it right or whatever.
Yep.
Like, oh my goodness. And that gets in the way of being able to understand what it really is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So another just key point is that things like dissociation can look like fine on the outside, but can really be debilitating on the inside, feeling numb and blank and shut down, sort of thing. So there's this big discrepancy between a person's inner experience and what it looks like happening on the outside of them. Right. So it's really almost like kind of a silent problem that's not recognized externally.
Right. Yeah, we see that when we deconstruct people's patterns
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. It shows up like that. Actually reminds me a little bit, when I worked at Craig Hospital years ago with people with traumatic brain injuries and people who had considered like quote unquote mild traumatic brain injuries, even though no brain injury is like mild, right? But they're mild compared to other more severe
Mhm.
ones. So oftentimes those mild TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, people wouldn't have physical challenges. So outwardly, people looked like they were doing
Fine.
great, but internally, they had lots of problems with memory and cognitive processing and fatigue. And I even had, I had a TBI when I was working at Craig in a car accident, and it was really interesting to me. I had trouble coming back to work for about 3 months, and even I'd come back to work, and my caseload was still there. And so my colleagues who were working with people with traumatic brain injuries had a hard time understanding why I was actually struggling with my carrying my caseload. And
You looked
but for me,
fine.
it was a wake up call around, wow, now I really understand what my patients are actually experiencing
Right, right.
around fatigue, memory loss, headaches, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's got to be so challenging.
Yeah. So trauma can oftentimes show up just like that, especially around like dissociation.
Right, right.
Yeah. So another point he makes in the book, which is really interesting, is that healing requires restoring the capacity to feel without being overwhelmed. And he makes this point pretty clearly. Like when we talk about how do we heal from trauma, we have to restore the capacity to feel, like coming back again to sensations, how important sensations are as signals for self-regulation, as signals for what a person needs to, even in the terms of like food or going to the bathroom or do I need sleep? Like lots of times with more significant trauma, like those sensory cues aren't recognized. And so people have a hard time self-regulating with things that we would take for granted as being common anytime else. But the idea is it's the capacity to feel without being overwhelmed or shutting down by those
Hmm.
feelings. So we talk a lot about kind of expanding our window of sensation to be able to be present in the world without feeling flooded by the world,
Hmm.
right? So that's a big key part of it. You know, what I thought was also interesting is that he kind of made it pretty clear in the book that when he looks at approaches that he deems effective, like whether it be like again, he looked at like EMDR and qigong and some of those practices. And so for them to be effective, he kind of has a little tick list of what needs to be included in order to have an effective process in terms of doing all the things we just lined out right there, restoring the capacity to feel without being overwhelmed. And here's the list. So the one thing is that there must be to be able to create felt safety. Does the program, does the modality, does the situation that you're working in, does it create safety? Does it feel safe? Not just cognitively reassuring, but does it feel safe in your body?
Hmm.
So that's really critically important in order to be effective with any of those modalities. So another one is, does the modality help someone build self-regulation skills? Like, is that a core part of it? And so both from bottom up and then also from top down, but starting from bottom up. We have to be able to build those skills in the body, right? What else we have? To help integrate traumatic memory so that the memory, so that we're focusing on the present moment and we're able to kind of integrate what happened in the past, but at the level of the body. So in some way helping the the timekeeping apparatus in the body come back into a situation where it can put things in a linear, understood progression, a kind of a coherent narrative, rather than these fragmented sensations, images, sensory flooding, and those kinds of things. So that's a really key part of the programs that he's advocating for. What else does he say? To restore agency, to restore self agency, which means that I can choose, I can act, I can notice, so that kind of moving more into that creator kind of role and getting out of a role where you're subject to things going on around you. We're going to step more into that kind of the role of self-agency and self-empowered kind of roles. Does the program actually promote that? That's a really important point. And then the other part was rebuilding connection with self, but also with others. So can you rebuild
Hmm.
healthy, trustworthy connection with other people? And so those are the tick marks of him suggesting, saying, if you're if you're working with in through a program that helps to heal traumatic or even traumatized nervous systems, which most people experience some type of traumatized nervous system level, whether, if not frequently, then often, and if not often, then occasionally. But most people are experiencing some sense of dysregulation on a regular basis. That you need to be kind of ticking those boxes, right?
Hmm.
And that the through line of all of this is that bottom up change supports top down meaning,
Right, exactly.
right?
Right, exactly. Hey, we do all of that here.
Yeah, well, then that's why thought it was important that we kind of list those points out. So as we talk about the bridge between the body, where the body keeps the score left off, and where sensation-based motivation coaching picks up, I wanted to make sure we opened up that conversation, that bridge of what are actually the qualities that Bessel van der Kolk is promoting of a modality or programs. So I want to just kind of bring that to the forefront.
Yeah, yeah, because there are different kinds of modalities that serve different people in different ways. I
Yep.
think the one thing that really struck me was this idea that is so core to what we do here about how important it is to change the internal state to be able to change the kind of insights
Yep.
that you're receiving.
Yeah.
Not everybody who's looking for support in, I guess we could say healing, is specifically looking to have insights so that they can do new different things in their lives. And some people are looking for healing's sake,
Hmm.
right? And so certain modalities would be good for that. One of the things that we really look at and we like coaching so much is because coaches help people to reach into a higher potential.
Yeah.
So that's a part of like, I'm trying to remember exactly what we tell students, but something like, now what? That's what it is. So, you can do different kinds of healing modalities. And the question I ask the students way at the beginning of the level 3 certification program we deal with our clients all the time is, but now what? Because you could go do a
Right.
healing
Mhm.
session, but not all practitioners will say, now what do you want to do with that?
Correct. Yep.
You know? So you just need to know as a person who's seeking out different modalities, you know, with that'll help you choose what kind of modality you want.
Yeah.
Do you want somebody who's saying, now what do you want to do with that?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's that segue or the bridge into the coaching stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So really, as we make that bridge where sensation-based motivation coaching picks up from where the body keeps the score left off, right? The body keeps the score is basically saying trauma lives in the body. And Body Keeps the Score does a great job of promoting a clinical understanding of that. And what we do here is turn that clinical understanding into a repeatable, coachable method, right? For day to day living, for day to day change. So that's really what we're doing here. We're taking all that information and we're turning it into a repeatable, predictable coaching method.
we actually take it out of the clinical realm too,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
right?
It's really for day to day living
Yeah, yeah.
and achievement and performance, and which is, I guess, you can consider day to day because whatever you're doing every day,
It's
right?
out of the clinic. I mean, you have some psychologists who work in high performance, sure, it's not, but their clients aren't going into the clinic to do that work. I mean, it's a different door you walk through.
Yeah, we're working out in the world,
Yeah,
right? We're working out in the world in a different way. It kind of reminds me again, I'm coming back to these whole ideas that when I worked at Craig Hospital again, is people needed to be in the hospital for a certain amount of time,
right.
but then eventually I was on the outpatient team. And we did a lot of community reintegration with
Yep.
people. So we were
Yep.
helping take people
The bridging it.
reintegrate, bridging back into their lives
Right.
at work, at the gym, in the grocery store,
It
those sorts
reminds
of
me
things.
of some of the work. We don't do this kind of stuff necessarily, but some of our graduates or our certification program do because, like, we have people doing recidification. Did I say that word right? But helping people who have been incarcerated get back into civilization, get back into communities. Like,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
that similar kind of
Yes,
idea.
exactly. Yeah.
But even people who are changing careers or changing jobs or going from college into the workforce or military who are coming back into job situations.
Correct.
Like we
Yeah.
have
Mhm.
students who are doing all kinds of things. And I think the kind of blanket term I would use for any of that is transition,
Yes. Wow. That's a great word.
right? Who people are who are in transition
Mhm. Yeah.
because there really needs to. I mean, we've worked in the clinical and coaching industry for so long to see so many different examples when people are in transition, so oftentimes they need a hand to hold. They need, people who can help them to navigate transition. But a lot of times what we look for is we look for somebody who has done the transition. We're looking for not an expert in transition.
Mm.
But that's what SBMC really is to help somebody become their own expert in transition, but we
Yeah.
help them through it because we're experts in transitioning.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. That's a really great framing, really
Good.
important framing. And again, because we take the information that's described in the book, and you kind of think about the book. I think about the book is kind of like mapping the territory
Absolutely.
of trauma and physiology.
Yeah.
And really, what we're doing is we're creating a procedure, right? Because SBMC, sensation-based motivation coaching, is a process. It's a procedure to basically take that map and turn it into a process, bring it to real life.
One of the things I'm really appreciating about this book and just other books in general that are written by people who have done the research and stuff and are
Hmm.
really in there looking at all the research. It's such powerful work. And I think sometimes we expect somebody to be both the researcher and the clinician, and sometimes that happens.
Yep.
But I'm just kind of thinking back to a number of different experts that I can think of who've really done the research to substantiate the work that then clinicians slash coaches slash all of those people, the people who are really in there with the clients creating modalities for helping,
Hmm.
and how those two things really go together. I think sometimes we can think that well, the one person has to do it all. The researcher has to have the methods, and the methods people have to have all the research. I think it's really cool that we have different professionals who are really good at different things, and then we can tag team kind of in kind of like the model that
Hmm.
we used to use in the clinical setting,
Yeah.
like you were talking about the community integration. Like that was done with a team.
Yeah. There's a whole team of
It's
us.
a team approach. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and I think that's again the way we look at synthesizing information is because we take the method we've created, sensation-based motivation coaching, is a synthesis of a lot of research,
mhm.
a synthesis of a lot of experience on both our parts of working in the clinical and working with in coaching programs and working with one-on-one coaching and those kinds of things, and taking all the research and all the learning and
And a number of
synthesizing it
different
in a
modalities.
number of different modalities and synthesizing it
Yeah.
into this repeatable coaching method. And when we link it back to, again, to the book, one of the hallmark parts of the book is to be able to, again, experience sensation in your body without being overwhelmed by it, right?
Right.
Without being flooded by it, and expanding your capacity to be with your inner world. So there's a word we talked about it a lot. It's called interoception. Interoception is the word that talks about inner sensory experience. So that's just the $5 word or whatever that we can kind of keep talking about. And really, what we're doing here at the Somatic Coaching Academy is we're helping people to become more masterful with their interoception, right? So they can learn to identify the specific sensations that are associated and precede things like avoidance, procrastination, people pleasing, shutdown, hyper vigilance, hyper urgency, because those are the things that get in the way of people creating change in their lives. Right. So when people are going through a process of change, a process of transition, I love that. And they have things that they want to create, things that they want to do. Resistance comes up, it gets in the way, and that resistance is going to come up on different levels of intensity for different people for different reasons. But this is how the nervous system is wired. This is how it's wired for everybody. And so what we're really doing is helping people identify ahead of time the very subtle micro cues, the micro sensations associated with the exact patterns of resistance that are going to shut them down if they let those sensations continue to grow and evolve, sort of thing, right? So that's one thing we're really helping people do. Is part of the process is helping them become so good at identifying exactly what's going on internally that then they can have choice and change what they're doing rather than feeling overwhelmed by their inner experience.
I think really practically, it comes down to making better decisions. And when I say better, I mean from a higher purpose with more inner peace and more ability to collaborate and things like that. Like these kinds of methods help somebody to be a really powerful, empowered,
Hmm.
creative, co-collaborative decision maker.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
And I appreciate the book so much because, we've had students come in who don't know a whole lot about all the things that the body keeps the score talks about. And they say, boy, these methods are amazing. And we give them science behind it, but to really have that detailed bit can give some students a real leg up to really understand what's going on so that they can really even better themselves with processes, help more people, be more articulate about what's going on.
Yeah.
So the book really does complement the work that we do here and give people such tremendous language. And it's so easy to have this book that's on the front table at Barnes and Noble
Mm.
because it's so unassuming to go recommend it to somebody,
Yeah.
go get that book. And if you got to dig through the back corners of the dusty
Mm.
shelf on Barnes and Noble, I think it has a different kind of feeling to
Yeah,
it. Than
totally.
if you walk in the bookstore and it's right there. Oh, everybody's reading it. It's
Yeah.
easier to pick up.
Yeah. And the fact is that like life doesn't stop happening. Right? I mean, life just keeps coming for people. And no matter what has happened with someone's nervous system, no matter what someone's nervous system is like in this moment, like the world just keeps evolving. And the world can evolve in ways that are just threatening for us in so many ways. And just because change by itself can kind of be threatening.
Yep.
And so, in some ways, if we look around you, the world is always evolving. If you look at nature, nature is always growing. Like that's just a facet of nature. It's always growing. And so, if nature is always growing, if the world is always evolving and growing, and we're a part of nature, we're a part of the world, there's always an impetus for us to grow as well. And growth isn't always comfortable for people. And I think that's not necessarily said in the book, but that's the bridge into the work that we do with people, right? Because really what we're doing again, when we're working with the sensation base, with the interoceptive base, one of the primary goals is help to train someone's nervous system to be able to embrace those sensations of growth, because those sensations of growth aren't always comfortable, and we can get signals
Or bad.
then, or bad, and we get signals that we shouldn't be growing, we shouldn't be changing. But then the problem is that the world continues to evolve, and if we don't keep evolving also, then we end up being worse off, in the end.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the thing about trauma is you learn you can't trust your own signals.
Yeah. So we got to start putting those things back together, which is why it's so important to kind of tick all those
Mm.
boxes. So again, the bridge, and just to kind of maybe circle back to something you said a little bit earlier, Ani, because we're working more in this coaching realm. We're asking people, how do we move from dysregulation in a nervous system? And this is whether or not someone has been diagnosed
Yeah.
with severe trauma or not. And so
Oftentimes not.
oftentimes not. And so again, what we do here at the Somatic Coaching Academy is not necessarily working with people who've been diagnosed with significant trauma. We're working with all human beings, all human nervous systems, because they all work the same way. The thing I really like about studying trauma is because it gives you a window into exactly how the nervous system works, and how it compensates for really serious events that happen in people's lives. And we can learn so much from that. And then we can take that information and help everyone on wherever they are in their healing and learning journey. Everybody can benefit from understanding how the nervous system works. Right? And there's so many courageous people doing this work in the world right now.
I'm just really hung up on the fact that there are certain populations who just, have had a lot of stuff happen.
Absolutely.
So it's true that we kind of help everybody here, and it's not just that we're working with people who have trauma, because it's not. And also, we just see, especially certain populations, have a significant amount of things that have happened to them. Like, for example, women, it's something, the statistics, something like 3 out of 4 women have been through some kind of like harassment or
Mhm.
aggressive event. Like certain populations have been through a lot. And the people are walking around trying to live everyday lives, having everyday goals that they would like to meet, and they just can't figure out why they can't do it. And that's, what SBMC does. And that's what we're trying to talk about here. I think it just normalizes the fact that certain people have been through a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Most certainly. Most certainly. And and again, the trajectory where we're kind of moving here is that we take the idea of the nervous system being first, if it's dysregulated, we help increase its capacity to be regulated. That's the
Mm-hmm.
very first step, right?
Yep.
Move from dysregulation to regulation, move from dysregulation to capacity to be regulated.
And then you work with that.
And then you work with that,
You
right? And
work
then
with
you go from
capacity.
capacity, to creating aligned action,
Mm-hmm.
much to your point. So it's like we don't stop at capacity.
Right,
We keep
exactly.
going forward and say, now what do you want to
What do you
do
want to
with
do with
that
that?
capacity? What do you want to build with that? What kind of life do you want to create? How do you want to be in the world?
And that, to be explicit with it, is a big, large reason why you and I left therapeutic-based practice. Because our experience of our work in therapeutic-based practice, to the most part, left people at, okay, we did the processes, see you next week. And that just, it felt to me like something was missing. I remember being on the other side of the table with a somatic therapist one time, who was awesome, by the way. And at the end of the session, it was like, okay, we're done. And she didn't ask me, how do you want to take this forward in your life? And what do you want to do now? And those are coaching questions. So of course she wouldn't, but I left the call and had to do that myself because I felt unfulfilled in that. And that's one of the reasons why you and I have moved into this space. It feels really complete to do work where you think about and are asked where you want to go next, how you want to make that practical, how you want to take it into your life. I just think it feels like really super fulfilling
Yeah.
on both sides of the table.
On both sides of the table. And we've actually designed our whole certification track to follow that process.
Yep.
So our level 1 somatic practice essentials certification is all about helping people and helping yourself to regulate your nervous system.
Step 1.
Yeah. So basically move
1, 2, 3.
Move from dysregulation to capacity. That's the first step, right?
Right.
And that's what we do with level 1. Level 2 is about helping you to grow and enhance your inner capacity. This is where you're basically training your nervous system, again, to embrace the sensations of growth, to be able to consciously change your interoceptive experience, your internal experience, so that you have now the agency and the choice to choose the sensations that are going to become the foundation of the third step, which is your aligned action.
What do you want to do with that?
And that's what we do in level 3. So in level 3, we go even a little further and we help you build on the inner capacity that you developed in level 2 and teach you how to coach yourself and coach other people to be able to take action that's aligned upon a robust inner capacity and an ability to regulate your own nervous system. So you have to have all 3 of those steps baked in. And that's exactly how we devised and developed and designed the certification track, because that's what you need to be able to do to help and support yourself and support other people as well.
Right. And that's the foundation that we use in our group programs and our private client programs here at Somatic Coaching Academy as well.
Yeah. So
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. So that's 1, 2, 3. Here we are again.
Came
Perfect.
back.
You came all the way back to it, to our episode 1, 2, 3.
That's right.
So that's the progression. That's the bridge from this amazing book into the work we do with sensation-based motivation coaching. If you have questions, thoughts, insights about the episode, please reach out and let us know. Leave us a review.
We'd love to hear. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3.
Cool. And we'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.